Good afternoon, everybody. People are starting to populate the virtual rooms. We'll give folks a couple seconds here, maybe a minute or so to get settled, and then we'll get going. So hang tight for just a minute. All right, the numbers are starting to slow down a little bit, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. We're at 1 minute after. Good afternoon, everyone. Pop, you want to advance to the next slide? Just want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us today. I'm just going to do a real quick logistical check-in for folks before we hand it off for the opening remarks. So the agenda here is on the screen. We've got a presentation from BOEM, the additional resources, the NEPA and EIS process overview, the project and the draft EIS overview, next steps, and then the Army Corps is going to make a presentation, and then we'll get to the public comment section and Q&A section. So I've got a little bit more details on how those will work and how you can interact with the meeting today. But first, I'm going to hand it off to Karen Baker for opening remarks. So go ahead and next slide, Poppy.
Hello, everybody. Again, this is Karen Baker. I'm the Chief of the Office of Renewable Energy Programs at the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, or BOEM. Welcome to BOEM's first of 3 virtual public hearings to discuss the draft environmental impact statement for the New England Wind Project offshore Massachusetts. We will also be hosting 2 other public meetings on February 1st and February 6th. For those of you who aren't familiar with BOEM, we are a federal bureau within the Department of Interior that oversees the development of our energy and mineral resources in the nation's outer continental shelf, or OCS. The OCS extends in most areas from about 3 miles offshore to the full extent of the exclusive economic zone, approximately 200 miles offshore. BOEM is responsible for the expeditious and orderly development of the energy resources of the OCS, including renewables like offshore wind. It's our job to ensure that this development is done in an environmentally and economically responsible way. This process starts with public input, data gathering, analysis, and leasing. After many years, we now have 28 active commercial leases for offshore wind in the Atlantic. As we've mentioned, we're here today to discuss the draft environmental impact statement for the New England Wind Project, which is one of those 28 leases. Your participation and feedback today are essential to BOEM's renewable energy program and plays a vital role in our environmental analysis of the proposed project and compliance with the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. BOEM would also like to note that on behalf of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, these virtual public hearings will serve as their public hearings for Section 10 and Section 404 permit review. Very pleased to have Tammy Turley, the Regulatory Program Chief for the New England District of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, on the line today, and she'll be also providing a brief opening statement as well. Thanks so much for joining us. We've had about 90 people or more individuals that have pre-registered to attend today. We're looking forward to talking to you, and we will have a comment period as well. There are about a dozen or so members of the BOEM staff, subject matter experts, who are participating today, and they're here to help provide any information we can. So we all look forward to hearing your comments and to answering any questions that you may have. I'll turn it back over to Todd. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Again, my name is Todd Olson. I'm going to be the facilitator today. So my job here is just kind of help keep things moving. I'll be calling on people during the comment section and helping us navigate the Q&A. So if you need help with the Zoom platform, there's just a couple of things you need to know about. The chat we want to reserve for technical questions. So if you got any problems that you're having with the Zoom platform, please put those in the chat. Raise your hand. We'll get to that as we get closer to the comment section. And Q&A, feel free to use that at any time. If you've got a question you'd like to be answered during the Q&A, you can enter that now or at any time during the event, or even if you know you're going to be raising a question during the comment section, please type out your question in the Q&A. That way we get the subject matter experts time to make sure that we answer those questions fully. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Poppy. If you are with the media, if you've got any questions, please reach out to Lisa at her email address, lisa.eng@boem.gov. And one more slide. When we get to the comment section, I'll go into more detail as we get a little more closer to that through the presentations. But when we get through the presentations, we'll ask folks to raise their hands. If they want to speak, we'll be calling on people in the order in which they raise their hand. You'll be given 5 minutes to speak. When I call your name, you will be asked to unmute yourself. So unmute yourself. You'll have 5 minutes to give your comment. If you do have more to say than the 5 minutes will allow, we would ask that you provide the rest of your comments in writing, and that'll be spelled out as we get a little bit closer. And again, if you have any questions, even during your comments, please type it into the Q&A to make sure that we are able to answer those questions fully. When I do call on you, we ask that you say and spell your name. This session is being recorded and transcribed, so to help the transcriptionist, the court reporter, navigate names, please say and spell your first and last name and identify any organization that you're with if you are. And then we will get through the comment section, we'll take a break, and then we'll get to Q&A after that. So I will be, as people raise their hands in batches of 5, I'll be putting in the chat the next 5 speakers, so you'll be able to see where you are in the line. If you're not in the line yet, that just means that there's at least 5 people in front of you. So pay attention to that chat box as we go through, and we'll get to folks' comments at that time. So at this point, next slide, Poppy. I'm going to turn it over to Christine for the first presentation.
Thanks, Todd. Hello, my name is Christine Crumpton, and I am the BOEM Environmental Coordinator for the New England Wind Project. And this afternoon, I will be presenting an overview of the Draft Environmental Impact Statement, or DEIS. The first thing I'd like to do is point out some additional resources that are available on BOEM's virtual meeting room webpage for the Draft EIS. The webpage address is provided at the bottom of this slide, and if you haven't already, we'd encourage you to browse the additional available content there, which includes posters on these topics in the virtual meeting room. Next slide. This EIS is being developed under the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, which requires federal agencies to assess the environmental effects of any major federal action that may significantly affect the quality of the human environment. The EIS must also provide an analysis of reasonable alternatives and the direct, indirect, and cumulative effects of the project. The NEPA process also includes public scoping and a minimum 45-day public comment period on the draft EIS. This project has a 60-day public comment period. The NEPA process collects relevant information for the decision maker to make an informed decision on whether to approve of the conditions, or disapprove the proposed New England Wind construction and operations plan. Next slide, please. The start of this project's NEPA process includes BOEM's issuance of the Notice of Intent to prepare this EIS, or NOI, which was published back on June 30th, 2021, opening a 30-day public comment period, which closed on July 30th, 2021. During that time, BOEM also held 3 virtual scoping meetings on July 19th, 23rd, and 26th, 2021. In fall of 2021, BOEM received an updated COP to incorporate additional cable routing variants for the Phase 2 offshore export cables. BOEM then issued a notice of additional public scoping and name change in the Federal Register, which opened a second public comment period on November 22nd, 2021, and closed on December 22nd, 2021. A scoping summary report, which summarizes the comments and significant issues that were raised during both scoping periods, was also prepared and is available on BOEM's New England Wind project webpage. Next slide, please. The Notice of Availability of the Draft EIS, or NOA, was published in the Federal Register on December 23rd, 2022. 3 virtual public hearings are scheduled. This is the first public meeting, and 2 others will be held. The 60-day comment period on the draft EIS closes on February 21st, 2023. Next slide, please. So now we'll move to a brief overview of the New England Wind project. So this project is being proposed on BOEM lease OCS A0534, which was designated as a new lease separate from 0501 back in June of 2021. Prior, it was encompassed by BOEM lease 0501, which is now assigned to Vineyard Wind 1 LLC. The proposed lease area is located roughly about 20 miles from the southwest corner of Martha's Vineyard and about 24 miles from Nantucket and immediately southwest of Vineyard Wind 1. The project is proposed to be constructed in 2 phases. Phase 1 is also known as Park City Wind, and Phase 2 is also known as Commonwealth Wind. And throughout this presentation, each phase will be referred to as Phase 1 or Phase 2. Using the Project Design Envelope or PDE approach, the Construction and Operations Plan or COP proposes a range of parameters which BOEM is analyzing under their proposed action. Offshore, the project proposes up to 129 wind turbine generators or WTGs spaced at 1 nautical mile apart, up to 5 offshore substations and 296 miles of inter-array cables connecting the turbines to the offshore substations. A total of 5 offshore export cables and an offshore export cable corridor or OECC from the offshore electrical service platforms connecting to the onshore components in Barnstable County, Massachusetts. In the event technical, logistical, and grid interconnection or other unforeseen issues arise, the project also proposes 2 contingency cable route variants for Phase 2, which may include additional onshore components in Bristol County, Massachusetts, which we'll talk about more in the next slide. So as mentioned previously, the project proposes a total of 5 offshore export cables and an offshore export cable corridor from the offshore electrical service platforms connecting to the onshore components in Barnstable County, Massachusetts, which is shown here in orange. All 2 cables for Phase 1 are proposed to be installed in the OECC. In the event technical, logistical, grid interconnection, or other unforeseen issues arise, the project proposes 2 contingency cable route variants for Phase 2, which are shown here in gray and purple. Gray being the Western Muskeget variant and purple being the South Coast variant. As shown in the figure, details regarding the landing locations and the onshore components have not been identified for the South Coast variant at this time, which is the route shown in the figure in purple. The project proposes a number of scenarios for which the cable routes for Phase 2 may be installed. So the table on this slide shows those scenarios in order of likelihood. So for example, scenario 1, for which all Phase 2 cables, which are 3 total, would be installed in the Eastern Muskeget OECC. And is the most likely scenario. In scenario 6, for which all 3 Phase 2 cables would be installed in the South Coast variant, is the least likely scenario. Next slide, please. For each phase, a range is proposed for the number of turbines as it's dependent on the final number and the final engineering and design of the project. Phase 1 could include a minimum of 41 and a maximum of 62 wind turbine generators and up to 2 electrical service platforms. And Phase 2, depending on the build out of Phase 1, could include up to 88 WTGs and 3 ESPs. Up to 10 positions in the Vineyard Wind 1 lease area, if not developed by Vineyard Wind, shown here in the blue and purple striped area, could be developed as part of the New England Wind project. Further, ESPs may be located at any WTG ESP position shown in the figure as the purple dots. ESPs may be located at separate positions, or two of the ESPs may be co-located at one of the potential grid positions. For phase 2, ESPs could also be mounted on WTG platforms. Next slide, please. So the turbines would have a maximum blade tip height of up to 1,171 feet, a hub height of up to 702 feet, and a rotor diameter of up to 935 feet, as shown in the figure all the way to the left. The maximum electrical service platform, or ESP, topside height above mean lower low water is 230 feet. The figure in the middle shows a representative figure of an ESP and also a conceptual drawing of a combined WTG ESP. For phase 1, monopile and pin pile jacket foundations are proposed foundation types for WTGs and ESPs. For phase 2, proposed foundation types include monopiles, jacket, or bottom frame foundations, and either pin piles or suction buckets could be used with the jacket and bottom frame foundations. Conceptual drawings of each proposed foundation type are in the figure on the bottom right. Scour protection consisting of rock may be used around all foundations if needed. The figure in the top right is a representative figure of scour protection installed around the base of a monopile foundation. There are several types of cable protection proposed, including rock, concrete mattresses, half-shell pipes, and Gabion rock bags. The design envelope also conservatively assumes that up to 6% of cables in the OACC could require secondary cable protection, and up to 2% of the total length of the inter-array and interlink cables could require cable protection. Next slide, please. As previously mentioned, the offshore export cables for both phase 1 and phase 2 would make landfall in Barnstable, Massachusetts. The ocean to land transition would use horizontal directional drilling, or HDD, below the shoreline to minimize surface disturbance. However, phase 1 and phase 2 would have separate landfall locations and onshore routes. Phase 1 would make landfall more specifically at Craigville Beach or Covels Beach in Barnstable. The two underground transmission cables would travel approximately 6.5 miles from the landfall location up to a substation at 8 Chute Flying Hill Road, ultimately connecting to the grid at the existing West Barnstable substation. Next slide, please. Phase 2 offshore export cables would make landfall at Dowseas Beach or Riano Avenue in Barnstable. The 3 underground transmission cables would travel approximately 10.6 miles from the landfall location up to the proposed substation at 8 Chute Flying Hill Road, ultimately connecting to the grid at the existing West Barnstable substation. As previously mentioned, the details for onshore components of the South Coast variant have not been provided at this time, but those would be located in Bristol County, Massachusetts. Next slide, please. The project has an estimated operational life of 30 years. At the end of the project's operational life, it would be decommissioned in accordance with a detailed project decommissioning plan developed in compliance with applicable laws, regulations, and best management practices at that time, and would be subject to BOEM review and approval. All facilities would be removed to a depth of 15 feet below the mudline unless otherwise authorized by BOEM. BOEM's implementing regulations at 30 CFR 585 provide specific financial security requirements for OCS projects and requires the lessee to provide a surety bond or other form of financial assurance. BOEM also requires leaseholders to prepare conceptual decommissioning plans when their project is first proposed and requires more detailed plans for evaluation at the time decommissioning is requested. Next slide, please. So BOEM has been in ongoing consultations with federally recognized tribal nations throughout the development of the draft EIS. This slide presents a summary of some, but not all, of the government-to-government consultation and coordination efforts that have occurred since the publication of the Notice of Intent to prepare this draft EIS. Next slide, please. So BOEM is using the NEPA substitution to fulfill its Section 106 obligations under the National Historic Preservation Act. There are currently 30 consulting parties on the New England Wind Project under Section 106, which includes tribal nations, federal agencies, state and local governments, and non-governmental organizations. BOEM has conducted one consulting party meeting to date for this project, with additional consultation meetings to be scheduled as needed throughout spring and summer 2023. Next slide, please. So to highlight some notable sections of the draft EIS, chapters 1, 2, and 3 of the main body contain the purpose and need, alternatives, including those eliminated from detailed analysis and why, and an assessment of the environmental consequences for each alternative. The PDE parameters and maximum case scenario are described in detail in Appendix C. The cumulative impact scenario, also referred to as a planned activity scenario in the draft EIS, is provided in Appendix E. Appendix G shows the assessment of resources determined to have minor or lower impacts. Appendix H contains the lessee's mitigation measures as proposed in the COP and other potential mitigation and reporting requirements identified for consideration by BOEM in the draft EIS. And Appendix J contains Section 106 finding of adverse effect and draft Section 106 memorandum of agreement. Next slide, please. So the draft EIS evaluates the no action alternative, which could be the disapproval of the proposed construction and operations plan. When analyzing the impacts of the no action alternative on each resource, BOEM considered the impacts of the past and ongoing trends and activities, which includes ongoing non-offshore wind and ongoing offshore wind activities on the baseline. BOEM also separately analyzes how resource conditions will be affected over time as reasonably foreseeable activities are implemented. The cumulative impacts of the no action alternative consider the impacts of the no action alternative in combination with other planned non-offshore wind and offshore wind activities as described in Appendix E, planned activity scenario. Next, the DEIS analyzes the proposed action, which is the project as proposed in the COP that was summarized earlier in this presentation. Lastly, it analyzes an action alternative, the habitat impact minimization alternative, which I'll discuss a little more in detail in the next few slides. Next slide, please. So before we get into the action alternative, I just wanted to share a note on the South Coast variant. The South Coast variant is analyzed as part of the proposed action in the draft EIS. However, it is a contingency route with limited details included in the COP for review at this time. If the South Coast variant is necessary, the applicant would be required to file a revision to their construction and operations plan, or COP, describing the need for the SCV and providing the information necessary to complete a sufficient analysis. In response, BOEM would complete additional environmental analysis and relevant consultations required by NEPA, NHPA, and other applicable statutes to inform BOEM's decision to approve with conditions, or disapprove the COP revision. So next slide, please. So alternative C1 would preclude the use of the Western Muskeget variant, limiting available cable route scenarios to those that include only the Eastern Muskeget route, or OECC, in red, which is shown in red in the figure, and the South Coast variant, which is shown partially in this figure in light purple. So by removing the option of the Western Muskeget variant, this alternative will limit the total number of potential crossings of the Mayflower Wind Project cable, which is shown here in green, to a single crossing south of the Muskeget Channel, which has potentially less biogenic structure than the additional crossing that would occur within the channel if the Western Muskeget variant route were used. Because cable crossings typically require protective structures such as half-shell pipes in lieu of burial, which could damage or destroy complex habitat features, by minimizing the number of cable crossings among the two projects, this alternative could potentially reduce impacts on complex benthic habitats. Next slide, please. So alternative C2, Eastern Muskeget route minimization. So this alternative was developed in response to National Marine Fisheries Services preference for all project offshore export cables to be routed through the Western Muskeget variant to minimize impacts on more productive hard complex habitat along the OECC. Information provided by the developer as well as BOEM subject matter expert review determined that it is not feasible for all 5 project cables to be installed in the Western Muskeget variant for a number of technical reasons regarding the existing conditions in the area, including high scour potential and steep slopes. However, alternative C2 maximizes the use of the Western Muskeget variant by limiting the number of phase 2 cables installed in OECC or the Eastern Muskeget route to 1, thus minimizing the amount of seafloor disturbance in the OECC in areas of hard complex habitat. Next slide, please. So these are the resource categories in Chapter 3, and there is an analysis of each alternative by category when applicable. Next slide, please. So as you can see from the example provided here, the EIS uses a four-level classification scheme. Tables in each resource section in Chapter 3 identify adverse and beneficial impact level definitions for all biological, physical, and socioeconomic resources that the proposed project and alternatives could potentially affect. In addition, impacts are defined in terms of their duration. In this example of potential impact levels for benthic resources within the project area, impact classifications are defined for both adverse and beneficial impacts where applicable. Temporary impacts are effects that end as soon as the activity ceases. An example would be road closures or traffic delays during onshore cable installation. Once construction is complete, the impact would end. Short-term effects are effects that may extend beyond construction, potentially lasting for several months, but not several years or longer. An example would be the clearing of onshore shrubland vegetation during construction. The area would be revegetated when construction is complete, and after revegetation is successful, this effect would end. Long-term effects are effects that last for a long period of time, decades or longer, and an example would be the loss of habitat where a foundation was installed. Permanent effects have no expected end. An example would be the conversion of land to support new onshore facilities or the placement of scour protection that is not removed as part of decommissioning. Next slide, please. So demographics, employment economics, environmental justice, land use and coastal infrastructure, aviation, undersea cables, marine minerals, recreation, and tourism, air quality, water quality, bats, birds, terrestrial habitats and fauna, and wetlands and other waters of the U.S. were all concluded to experience minor or lower impacts from the proposed action. Discussions of these resource areas can mostly be found in Appendix G of the draft EIS. Some of these resources are discussed in Chapter 3. Next slide, please. So navigation and vessel traffic, other uses such as radar systems, military uses, benthic resources, coastal habitats and fauna, finned fish, invertebrates and EFH or essential fish habitat, marine mammals and sea turtles could all experience up to moderate impacts from the proposed action. When evaluated in the context of cumulative activities, these impact levels were the same both with or without the proposed action taking place. Each resource analysis in Chapter 3 also includes a discussion of potential mitigation measures that could be applied to reduce these effects. Next slide, please. Commercial fisheries and for-hire recreational fishing, cultural resources, scientific research and surveys, scenic and visual resources, as well as U.S. Coast Guard search and rescue activities were concluded to experience potentially up to major impacts from the proposed action when combined with the cumulative activities. And again, the draft EIS includes a discussion of potential mitigation measures that could be applied to reduce potential effects. Next slide, please. The proposed action may also result in potential beneficial effects. Air quality and environmental justice could potentially experience beneficial impacts to reduce net greenhouse gas emissions in the area of analysis over the long term. Benthic habitats, birds, finned fish, recreational fishing, marine mammals, and sea turtles could experience potential beneficial artificial reef effects, and economics, employment, and coastal infrastructure could benefit through job creation and supporting designated uses at ports. In addition, the estimated capacity range for this project is up to 2,600 megawatts, which could power more than 900,000 homes per year. Next slide, please. So each alternative has been analyzed both alone and with ongoing offshore wind activities, and additionally, when combined with other reasonably foreseeable planned actions. Tables ES3 in the executive summary, as well as table 2.4-1 in chapter 2 provides a summary comparison of the alternatives in table format. On this slide is an example for benthic resources. Alternative C's incremental impact to benthic resources, especially relocating export cables from certain resource areas, would be reduced when compared to the proposed action, but would remain negligible to moderate beneficial. A more detailed narrative comparison of the alternatives is provided at the conclusion of each resource section in chapter 3. So as far as next steps, so comments received today and during the comment period will be assessed and considered by BOEM and the cooperating agencies during preparation of the final EIS. Necessary changes to the document will be made in response to comments, and new information and responses to comments will be provided in an appendix to the final EIS. The final EIS will also identify a preferred alternative. Next slide, please. So again, the 60-day comment period on the draft EIS ends on February 21st. The next steps in the EIS schedule will be to publish the final EIS, which is currently targeted for September of 2023, and to issue the record of decision, which is targeted for October of 2023. You can provide comments on the draft EIS by using regulations.gov, providing verbal comments during any of our public hearings, or by mailing written comments to the Office of Renewable Energy Programs at the address provided on this slide. Comments must be postmarked no later than February 21st, 2023. If you prefer to submit your comments electronically, please visit http://regulations.gov and search for docket number BOEM, so BOEM-2022-0070, and click on the comment button. As a reminder, BOEM does not consider anonymous comments, so please include your name and address as part of your submittal. All comments will be made part of the public record and may be publicly posted without change. Next slide, please. And finally, to be most helpful, comments should be as specific as possible. For example, a useful substantive comment would discuss the accuracy of the information, suggest alternate methodologies and the reasons why they should be used, provide new information relevant to the analysis, identify a different source of credible research, which, if used in the analysis, could result in different effects, or provides clarification where needed. Next slide. So this concludes BOEM's portion of today's presentation. I really appreciate everyone's time and attention. So now I will turn it back over to Todd.
Great. Thank you, Christine. We do have one more presentation, but just want to tee up that we are going to be getting to comments and questions after that. I do have a couple of folks that are queued up to speak during the comment section. A reminder at the bottom of the screen, if you would like to speak during the public comment portion, click on raise your hand and that will put you in line to speak during the comment portion. If you have a question, go ahead and enter that into the Q&A at any time, and then they can start working on crafting that answers. If you do have a question during the comment period, just know that we won't get to an answer until we get to the Q&A. We want to give folks time to provide their comments during the comment section before we get into any sort of response, which we will do during the Q&A. So one more presentation. Again, go ahead and get in line, raise your hand if you want to speak, enter your question in the Q&A, and I'm going to turn it over to Tammy for the next presentation.
Thanks, Todd. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, go ahead.
Awesome, thank you. Well, good afternoon. My name is Tammy Turley. I'm the Chief of the Regulatory Division of the New England District Corps of Engineers. Again, thank you for attending today and providing input on the proposal. Your participation is vital to a productive and thorough environmental review for both agencies. The mission of the Corps regulatory program is to protect the nation's aquatic resources and navigation capacity while allowing economic development through fair and balanced decisions. Next slide. A National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, evaluation is required for proposals requesting federally authorization from the Corps of Engineers. For this proposal, as you've heard, BOEM is the lead federal agency for the NEPA review, and the Corps is serving as a cooperating agency in this environmental review. We intend to utilize the BOEM-led environmental impact statement to also serve as the Corps of Engineers NEPA review. On the next slide, I will introduce the Corps of Engineers regulatory authorities that are applicable for this project. Next slide, please. The Corps of Engineers regulatory program is primarily administered under two authorities, Section 10 of the Rivers and Harbors Act and Section 404 of the Clean Water Act. This diagram depicts the limits of Corps of Engineers authority in tidal waters and in fresh waters. On the next few slides, I will speak more specifically to the impacts proposed under each of these authorities. Next slide. Under Section 10 of the Rivers and Harbors Act, the Corps regulates structures and other work in navigable waters. For this project, the shoreward limit of navigable waters is the mean high water line of Nantucket Sound, and the seaward limit is 3 nautical miles measured from the baseline of the territorial seas. The proposed work regulated within navigable waters are outlined in red on this figure, and the proposed work under this authority includes the 5 export cables, the dredging and fill for the installation of the cables, the horizontal directional drilling work and exit pits, and any hard armoring necessary for cable protection. Next slide. Also, under Section 10, the Corps regulates structures on the outer continental shelf. For this project, regulated structures associated with the project are outlined in red on the figure, and these structures include the turbines, offshore substations, all associated cables, and any required hard armoring for cable protection. Next slide. Under Section 404 of the Clean Water Act, the Corps of Engineers regulates the discharge of dredged or fill material into waters of the United States. For this project, the shoreward limit of WOTUS is the high tide line of Nantucket Sound, and the seaward limit extends 3 nautical miles as measured from the baseline of the territorial seas. And the applicant has not proposed impacts to non-tidal waters, and that would include wetlands, mudflats, and eelgrass. Next slide. Proposed activities subject to the Clean Water Act Section 404 authority occur within the area outlined in red on the figure. The proposed 404 discharges are related to the cable installation and include the backfilling of the trench during cable laying and the redeposition of dredged material within the horizontal directional drill exit pits. Discharges also include the placement of hard armor as needed for any cable protection. Next slide. The Corps published a public notice on December 23rd with a 60-day comment period. The public notice and plans can be accessed by following the link on the slide, then looking under Regulatory Permitting Public Notices. On the next slide, I'll speak more specifically to the proposed impacts and regulatory authority for each activity. Next slide. The proposed impacts are listed for each activity and authority for Phase 1 of the project, Park City Wind. The proposed temporary impacts are primarily related to the installation of the wind farm components, and the permanent impacts are related to the structures themselves and any hard armoring placed over the cables for protection. This figure depicts the proposed phases and associated turbine layouts, one of the potential turbines, and the proposed layout of inner array cables. Next slide. And this slide lists those same impacts proposed for Phase 2 and those associated temporary and permanent impacts. I'll now speak more specifically to our evaluation process. Next slide. The Corps of Engineers public notice serves as the initiation of the public interest review. This review requires the evaluation of the probable impacts of the proposed activity on the public interest. The public interest review factors are listed on the slide. Our decision will reflect the national concern for both the protection and utilization of important resources. And the Corps can only issue a permit if the proposal is found to not be in or to not be contrary to the public interest. Next slide. The 404B1 guidelines apply to work within Section 404 jurisdiction. To reach compliance with these guidelines, the Corps is unable to authorize a proposed discharge if there is a practical alternative to that proposed discharge that would have less adverse effect on the aquatic ecosystem, so long as such alternative does not have other significant adverse environmental consequences. And the Corps must identify the least environmentally damaging practicable alternative and may only permit that alternative. This figure shows some, but not all, of the potential alternatives that would be considered under the Corps 404B1 guidelines evaluation. Next slide. And lastly, when making a permit decision, the Corps must ensure compliance with other federal laws, including but not limited to Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, Section 7 of the Endangered Species Act, and the Magnuson-Stevens Fisheries Management Act. BOEM is also serving as lead federal agency for these consultations. In addition, the Corps must also ensure that appropriate tribal consultation has occurred and that we meet our tribal trust responsibilities. Also, on the state level, a 401 water quality certification and coastal zone management consistency determination are required prior to the issuance of a Corps permit. And that concludes the Corps of Engineers overview. Back to you, Todd.
Great. Thank you, Tammy. We are going to take a short break. Christine, what time should we ask folks to be back by?
I think a 5-minute break.
5-minute break? I've got 12:42, so we'll take a break until 1:47. We will come back. I'll go over the instructions. If you're on the phone and would like to raise your hand, *9, we'll get you in the line. We do have a handful of folks in line ready to speak. So we'll go over all the details once we come back at 1:57. So thank you very much. Be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're about ready to get started with our listening session. If we could go to the next slide, please. Actually, let's go one more. All right. Again, a reminder, you are able to provide public comments during this hearing. We are going to limit comments to 5 minutes. There will be a timer on the screen to help you keep track of that time. In order to be respectful of everyone's time, if your comments can't be wrapped up in 5 minutes, we do ask that you submit the remainder of your comments either in writing to the address listed on the screen here or online at www.regulations.gov. So just a reminder, we want to be respectful of each other. We want to be respectful of our time together here. The timer will start when you come off mute and begin to speak. If you do want to speak, again, please get your hand raised. We've got a line that started. If you're on the phone, go ahead and go to the next slide, please. If you are on the phone, please press *9. That way I'll be able to see that you would like a chance to speak. I don't have your name if you're on the phone, so I'll read the last 4 numbers of your phone number when we get to you. And then once we get through the list, we will take another break before we get to the Q&A. And a reminder, if you do have questions, please pop those into the Q&A. Again, that's at the bottom. Just click on Q&A and type your question in, and we'll get to that when we get to that section. So when I call on your name, I will allow you to unmute yourself. You'll have to unmute yourself. Please say and spell your name for the court reporter first and last, and identify any organization that you're with, and then go ahead and get started. And once you start, we will start the timer. So let's go ahead to the timer here, and we're going to go ahead and get started with, so I've been putting names in the chat as they come up so you can see the first list. We've got 4 names here. William Lake is going to go first, and then Noel Pena, Suzanne Conley, and Susanna Hatch. So William Lake, go ahead and come off mute and go ahead and get started.
Thank you. I think I'm unmuted. I am
Go ahead.
William Lake, WILLIAM LAKE. I'm a resident of Aquino, Massachusetts, where I chair the town's Climate and Energy Committee. I'm also a board member of Vineyard Power, a nonprofit devoted to promoting clean energy and energy resiliency on Martha's Vineyard. Like their sibling, Vineyard Wind 1, the 2 projects that are together called New England Wind are urgently needed to enable Martha's Vineyard and the Commonwealth to meet their declared renewable energy goals. While other parts of the country may have other renewable energy resources, in the Northeast, the major resource we have, and the one we need to rely on, is offshore wind. Without offshore wind projects such as New England Wind, we simply can't hope to significantly reduce our carbon emissions and mitigate our contribution to climate change. New England Wind alone will reduce carbon emissions by nearly 4 million tons, equivalent to taking more than 800,000 cars off the road annually. And Massachusetts has the opportunity to become one of the centers of the offshore wind industry, making this industry a mainstay of the state's economy. New England Wind alone is expected to bring over 15,000 jobs to the region. Through partnerships with other companies, New England Wind plans to invest $200 million to develop a full-scale cable manufacturing facility at Somerset, and to work with the city of Salem to transform Salem Harbor into an offshore wind marshaling port. We see signs every day of the urgency of mitigating climate change. Offshore wind is the most important thing we can do in New England to reduce carbon emissions. And time is not on our side. I hope that BOEM will promptly approve the New England Wind projects. Thank you.
You're on.
I apologize. I was on mute there. Noelle is next in line, and I see that she's no longer in the meeting. So if Noelle, if you come back, please resubmit and we'll try to get to you later. Next,
She's there.
oh, is she? Oh, my apologies. Go ahead and get started.
Sure. On behalf of, I am the Chief of Staff at the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of more than 1,000 member businesses that we have at the Chamber and organizations in the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce, I wish to lend our support to New England Wind. We have been working with and hearing from our wind partners since the start of these projects on Cape Cod. And since 1921, the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce has worked to strengthen and promote the economic viability, cultural richness, and environmental sensitivity and the social needs of Cape Cod. The region is grounded in the Blue Economy. Here we house the Blue Economy Foundation. And the Blue Economy is one where its water resources drive economic prosperity. This acknowledgement forces recognition that the environment is our economy and that balancing both is critical to our region's health and wellness. Investment in sound energy policy is a critical component to the region's health and prosperity. We hope that you do approve the New England Wind project and the policies and procedures that they need to put into place. We have been heard on more than one occasion from economists throughout the state that offshore wind is the #1 way and the #1 economic driver that will be coming to southeastern Massachusetts, going on for this the rest of our decade and for the rest of this century. So this is a very important issue that we're watching at the Chamber. Not only that, but we are also looking at how local businesses can benefit from the offshore wind industry, and also that there can be great careers made in our region because of the industry. So thank you for hearing me today.
Thank you, Noelle. Did you spell your name for the reporter?
Oh, my name is Noelle Pina. That's Noelle. My last name is Pina, Pina. I'm the Chief of Staff at the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce.
Great. Thank you very much. Next, we are going to go to Suzanne Conley. Suzanne, when you come off mute, please say and spell your name and any group that you're with. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Suzanne Conley, SUSANNECONLEY. I represent the organization Save Greater Dowses Beach. I have a number of questions. I actually uploaded them into the Q&A, so you do have them recorded, but I still would like to speak. First of all, sections 1 through 4 and sections 7 through 8 of volume 2 of the COP are redacted in their entirety. Additionally, the information included on pages 5-61 through 5-68 is completely redacted by blackout. The table of contents for volume 2 indicates that all the information not shared includes matters of interest to the public regarding environmental impact, I think. Question, first, why the heavy redaction? And second, when will the full scope of volume 2 be available to the public? That's volume 2 of the COP. Our group is primarily solely interested in preventing the use of Dowses Beach to land these electrical export cables. We note that in volume 2 of the COP, there's an indication that there are 3 areas of complex habitat that exist along the OECC. 2 of these are in the Muskeget Cut. The third straddles the length of the barrier spit known as Dowses Beach and across the East Bay Channel that is part of the greater Dowses Beach estuarine environment. First, why does the inset in figure 5.2-7 show the nearshore proposed cable route and show the area directly in front of Dowses as complex habitat, while the inset eliminates Dowses from the map, showing beaches further to the east instead? Second, does the complex habitat indicated in figure 5.2-7 include the area recognized as a possible eelgrass bed at Dowses Beach? These are on pages 5 through 57 of volume 2. Thirdly, why is the COP submitted to BOEM in June 2022 substantially and significantly different from the proposed details related to phase 2 presented to the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act, or MEPA, in September of 2022. These differences include descriptions of alternate sites considered, the means of transitioning cables to municipal roadways, the length of the construction period proposed, and even variations on the number of cable landings at Dowses Beach from Commonwealth Winds leased area in the OCS. Fourth, and finally, given the Department of the Interior's announcement on January 17th of the reorganization of regulatory oversight as it relates to renewable energy, will the proposal be subjected to review by the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement? I presume you all call that BSEE as well. If the answer is no, can the public request that that bureau is also allowed to review the inevitable safety and environmental concerns held by our group? I do want to say unequivocally that our group supports the development of renewable energy, including ocean-based wind energy. We are not opposed to ocean-based wind energy. We are opposed to a process that allows developers to take over precious public beaches, in this case, one that fronts an estuarine area, and tell us that they're going to do it whether we like it or not. That's all I have to say for now. I'll be attending the other two meetings, and our group will be submitting a comprehensive statement prior to February 21st in response to the DEIS, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Suzanne. And I appreciate you getting your comment or your questions in writing. So we've got that teed up for later on. Next up in line, we've got Susanna Hatch, and after that, we're going to have M. Smith. So Susanna Hatch, go ahead and
hello, can you
if
hear
you're
me?
off mute, yep, go ahead.
Hi, this is Susanna Hatch. My name is spelled S-U-S-A-N-N-A-H, last name H-A-T-C-H. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today. I am the Director of Clean Energy Policy at the Environmental League of Massachusetts. I'm also the Regional Lead for New England for Offshore Wind, which is a regional coalition of a broad-based number of organizations, of over 100 different organizations across the entire New England region. We support an expeditious and thorough environmental review for New England, for the New England offshore wind project. A few things that I want to touch on today. First, the climate and health benefits of offshore wind is one of the big reasons that we support the development of this renewable energy resource. It's our best opportunity for new renewables in New England, and analyses have shown that it's likely to provide around 50% of our energy supply by 2050 if we are to succeed in reaching our climate goals. Such climate goals have been set by almost all of the New England states and are really driving the need for offshore wind, which is set to be the workhorse of our decarbonization efforts in this region. So this renewable energy resource is absolutely critical to meeting those goals and requirements across all of those states. The economic benefits are another thing that I'll touch on. First of all, nobody in here is a stranger to the fact that the cost of our energy has really skyrocketed in staggering ways this winter. And that is very much because of our over-reliance on fossil fuels, because of the global markets and the war in Ukraine. So we are really encouraged by the potential of offshore wind to help stabilize and decrease energy costs across our region, and also to increase reliability, because our over-reliance on fossil fuels have also created some winter reliability risks that offshore wind will really be able to address. The expansion of this industry over the next decade could also create tens of thousands of high-quality jobs through the establishment of a domestic workforce and a supply chain. And it's worth noting that this project in particular has some really great proposals, including an offshore wind port in the city of Salem, Massachusetts, a manufacturing plant in Somerset, Massachusetts, and an operations and maintenance hub in Connecticut as well, that will be really critical to driving those high quality jobs. And of course, with the right policy and planning, this also has the potential to drive equitable access to economic opportunity with those jobs. and building wealth in communities that have been historically underserved in our region. And finally, we believe strongly in environmental and wildlife protection, and we believe that offshore wind can be developed responsibly for the environment and for wildlife. And a thorough and expeditious environmental review is critical to that. So we really appreciate BOEM's hard work on this. We will be reviewing the DEIS in more detail and submitting comments in writing around any additional points that I haven't touched on here. So just want to end by thanking BOEM for the opportunity to provide comment. And as I said, we'll be submitting written comment before the deadline. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Suzanne. I appreciate it. If you do want to speak, please make sure that you leave your hand raised so that when we get you in line, we're ready to go. I see M. Smith has lowered their hand. If you do want to get back in line, please raise your hand again. We'll get you back in line. But with your hand down, I'm going to just make the assumption that you no longer wish to speak. Oh, there you are. You're back up. Okay. All right. We're going to go to you now. Please come off mute when it prompts you and say and spell your first and last name and any group you're with. M. Smith, are you able to come off? Try one more time here. You should receive a prompt that says, please unmute yourself. Okay, we're going to go to the next person in line. They may be having some technical problems. Peter Silva, we're going to go to you next. And then Mike Okanewski, we'll go to Peter Silva right now. So Peter, when you're prompted, please come off mute. Say and spell your name, any organization you're with. Peter,
Good
looks
morning.
like
My name is Peter Silva. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
First name is spelled Peter. Last name is Silva. And I'm an elder with the Shinnecock Tribal Nation, Long Island, and traditional tribal chief of Hassanamisco Indian Reservation, Central Massachusetts. Our family was historically responsible for the river system in the lower part of Massachusetts, Black River River. My comments are and concerns are the following. Here on the southern part of Long Island, just off the Shinnecock Reservation, over the past 90 days, we've have had 90 large whales beach, and we also have 3 whales that are dead, with an unknown number of whales that have died in the water. In evaluating reasons why, we have, although I've not observed the whales myself, reports are suggesting that there's some abuse of the whale, but nothing that would suggest attacks from aquatic enemies. More a banging and bruising type of effect. In my limited ability and understanding of what could cause this, there's only one thing that's out there that indeed could cause this type of situation, and that's the use of sonic waves. And we all know that sonic systems are currently being used to map the bottom. And I'm also concerned because we're so close to the continental shelf that the U.S. Navy may be involved in assisting the process and using their technologies as well. I haven't heard anyone talk about the impact of sonic waves on whale porpoises and other life. I would hope that is addressed. My second point, I'm also concerned about the impact of high energy cables underwater, as well as on land, and the impact of the natural environment as well as the human environment. I don't know if that's addressed elsewhere. I'm moving to item number 3. I'm concerned about the possibility of no aquatic swim zones. that would be caused by a combination of factors: the low frequency noise of the windmills working themselves, the windmill motors themselves, and the generation of electricity. These buffer or no swim zones that I'm fearing would indeed cut off the flow of aquatic activity from the ocean, from the open ocean into our rivers, bays, and salt marshes. I'm moving to my next item, number 4. I'm concerned about the aquatic pressure waves, the impact that that it will have on the natural environment. And we know that these waves cause all kinds of problems as far as humans onshore. And I have to believe that it's going to also cause an aquatic impact. And I don't know if that's discussed elsewhere. I'm concerned about the, in relationship to that, I'm also concerned about the breaks and breaks and weakening in the wind and its impact on, especially on our salt marshes that protect us from ocean storms and northeasters and hurricanes. The wind change or the weakening of wind could indeed have a significant impact on the rooting system of our salt marshes, making the plant's root system not go as deep because of the change in wind pressure and direction. That results is when a storm comes through that it devastates those marsh areas and causing potentially more damaging floods in our areas that currently are in danger. I'm moving to the next item, and that is the I'm concerned about vibrations as far as the continental shelf is concerned. We're close to that continental shelf. We're only a blip on the screen, and those constant vibrations, I'm sure, have been evaluated, studied, and I'm looking forward to reports on that. I'm concerned about moving to the next item. I'm concerned about the
Peter,
fact
we're
that,
gonna run out of time here. Please try to get your last point.
okay, the failure of the windmill production supply system. It's apparently now beginning to break down as a result of overload. I'm concerned that if we have inferior products going in on land, the effects of salt water is going to have even a more devastating impact on that, and I'm concerned about that. And hopefully we have information that would suggest that that is not the case. But right now, studies are showing, current studies, today's studies are showing that these windmills are totally collapsing, limited in number, but it's happening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. If you've got more comments you'd like to make, please make those remaining points in writing. Thank you for your comments here today.
Thank you.
We're going to try one more time here with M. Smith. When prompted, please unmute yourself. We're going to give you just a second here to try to join us and make your comment. All right, doesn't seem like they're able to come off of mute. So we're going to go to the last person we've got signed up. Again, if you do want to speak, please make sure you raise your hand or *9 if you're on the phone. So Mike, it looks like you are off mute. Please say and spell your name, list any group that you're with, and go ahead and get started.
Well, first, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Mike Okoneski, spelled MikeOkonieWSKI. I represent the West Coast Pelagic Conservation Group, and we're interested to see how it develops on the East Coast, because most of what's played out on the East Coast so far is taking place or starting to take place on the West Coast. And we do have friends and fishermen and processors back in the East Coast as well, and acquaintances. I've been 53 years in the fish business and worked all 3 Western states, Canada and Alaska as well. and have sales and production experience on land, mostly a little bit of fishing, but very little. And I am a recreational fisherman. I guess the first question is what is up to major impact as it was stated on fishing? I'm not sure if there is major impact on what part of it, if not, what part of it is only moderate. All indications I've heard from listening to people on the East Coast is that it will be a major impact. And from studying the West Coast, we know it's going to be. Number two is, what is your definition of cumulative impacts? Does it take into account the hydrological and ecological, ecological function, like wind wakes, changes in upwelling, temperature, or other ecological function or hydrological function that, say, might affect something like phytoplankton, which, as I understand, absorbs a lot of carbon and necessary for fish to feed on the food web. The last one is one of the developers we talked to on the West Coast, or would-be developers, is talking of buying the lease and then selling it later before construction starts. And we just had concerns, I guess, that if there were requirements attached to the lease, if the new buyer would have to live up to those requirements, because the contracts could be something outside of the lease that would not be part of that. So that transaction or guarantee something, the first thing that comes to mind would be compensation. And that's it. I appreciate the opportunity to testify. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your comments. We've got just one person left that has their hand raised, M. Smith. You can try Alt-A on your keyboard. That if you're having trouble finding the unmute button, you can try to unmute yourself that way. Or else maybe try holding down the space bar if you're with us. Okay, it seems we're unable to get this person on to join us for the comment. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide, please. We're going to take a quick break here. We do have a number of comments or questions that we're going to need to get through. So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. We'll come back at 2:20 and we'll get started with the Q&A section. We may be taking several breaks during the Q&A just to make sure that questions or answers are complete before we come back on. So I believe we've got a couple ready. We'll get to in 5 minutes here. So come on back at 2:20. Thank you, everybody. Right, it is 2:20 and we're ready to get going again here. All right, so the next step of this meeting is we're going to get into the Q&A from those that supplied written comments or written questions during the Q&A. So we're going to get into those. Give me just a moment here. I apologize. I got multiple screens going here. So the Q&A is now closed. We're going to address those that we have received. And we're going to go in the order that they are ready with responses. So give me just a second here. So the first question we're going to address is from Michael Johnson, and Zach is going to provide the answer here, I believe. Your presentation stated the maximum number of WTGs for both phases is 129. However, it also stated maximum number of WTGs for phase 1 is 62, and the maximum number of phase 2 is 88. The combined totals for both phases would be 150, not 129. Please explain this discrepancy. So Zach, do you want to come on camera and answer that one?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, my name is Zach Jilka. I'm a project coordinator within the Office of Renewable Energy Programs, and thank you for the question. It's a discrepancy around sort of the ranges that were given, so I'll explain that. The maximum number of wind turbine generators you provided are the top end of a range for each phase. However, the applicant is not proposing to develop the maximum number of wind turbine generators for both phases. So the proposed project includes up to 130 positions in which a wind turbine generator or electrical service platform could be installed. At least one of those positions will be dedicated to an electrical service platform. The remaining 129 positions could be occupied by wind turbine generators. So for example, if phase 1 were to require 62 wind turbine generators, then phase 2 would consist of no more than 67 positions that would be occupied by wind turbine generators. Hopefully that clarifies the question. If not, we're happy to follow up with you, Michael.
Thank you, Zach. The next question we have is from Suzanne Conley, and I believe Jessica is going to answer this one. So Jessica, if you want to come on, I'll read through the question here. Given the Department of the Interior's announcement on January 17th of the reorganization of regulatory oversight as it relates to renewable energy, will the proposal be subjected to review by the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement as well? If the answer is no, can the public request that it is given the inevitable safety and environmental concerns held by our group?
Thank you. So thank you for your question. I am Jess Stromberg, and I am acting as the Chief of the Environment Branch for Renewable Energy in the Office of Renewable Energy Programs at BOEM. The Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement, or BSEE, serves as a cooperating agency for the New England Wind Environmental Impact Statement. BSEE has reviewed the construction and operations plan, as well as the draft EIS. Any comments submitted on the draft EIS will be reviewed and responded to by BOEM with the support of cooperating agencies, including BSEE. The rulemaking that was announced by the Department of the Interior on January 17th does not make substantive changes to current regulatory requirements, nor does it impose additional regulatory burdens. Key authorities transferred to BSEE include, but are not limited to, evaluating and overseeing facility design, fabrication, installation, safety management systems, and oil spill response plans, enforcing operational safety through inspections, incident reporting, and investigations, enforcing compliance, including safety and environmental compliance with all applicable laws, regulations, leases, grants, and approved plans through notices of noncompliance, cessation orders, civil penalties, and other appropriate means, and also overseeing decommissioning activities. And additional information about that rulemaking can be found on BOEM's website. And I believe we have a link that we can copy and paste into the chat.
Thank you, Jess. Appreciate that. Next question, I believe, is going to go to Christine, and this one is from Suzanne Conley. Figure 5.2-7 in volume 2 of the COP indicates that 3 areas of complex habitat exist along the OECC. 2 of these are in the Mesquite Cut. The third goes the length of the barrier spit known as Dowses Beach and across the East Bay Channel that is part of the estuarine environment. Why does the inset in figure 5.2-7 showing the nearshore proposed cable route clearly show the area directly in front of the as complex habitat while the inset eliminates Dowses from the view? So Christine, we'll turn that one over to you.
1 second, sorry. So thank you for your question. So the commenter may be referring to figure 5.2-5B as figure 5.2-7 in the COP depicts an eelgrass bed near Spindle Rock and possible edge of a seagrass bed near Dowses Beach. The DEIS discusses offshore export cable route impacts on complex habitat in Chapter 3, Section 3.4. BOEM will ensure that the image of the complex habitat near Dowses Beach are fully captured in the final EIS. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. And I think we're coming right back to you for the next one here. Sections 1-4 and 7-8 of volume 2 of the construction and operations plan are redacted in their entirety. Additionally, the information included in pages 5-61 through 5-68 is completely redacted. The table of contents for volume 2 indicates that all the information not shared includes matters of interest to the public. Question: why the heavy redaction and when will the full scope of 5.2 be available?
Thanks. So the redacted sections you're referring to are within the Marine Site Investigation Report, portions of which have been identified as containing confidential business information by the lessee and therefore are not subject to public release. BOEM will withhold trade secrets and commercial or financial information that is identified as privileged or confidential from public disclosure by the lessee in accordance with the terms of 585.113. So per 30 CFR 585.113 and subject to the limitations of the Freedom of Information Act, BOEM will consider the release of geological and geophysical data either 3 years after the initiation of commercial generation or 3 years after the lease terminates. So at BOEM's request, the developer prepared non-technical summary reports for the Marine Archaeological Resource Assessment, or MARA, and the Terrestrial Archaeological Resource Assessment, and TARA, to provide the public with information regarding the affected marine and terrestrial environment without disclosing sensitive cultural or historical sites or business confidential information. And these reports can be found on the BOEM website, and the links will be dropped in the chat.
Thank you, Christine. And I think we've got one more for you if you want to stay with us here. Why is the COP submitted to BOEM in June 2022 substantially and significantly different from the proposal details related to phase 2 presented to the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act in September of 2022? These differences include descriptions of alternate sites considered, the means of transitioning cables to roadways, and even variations on the number of cable landings at Dowses Beach from Commonwealth Winds lease area.
Sure, thanks, Todd. So BOEM is not aware of the project details related to phase 2 that were presented to the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act in September of 2022. BOEM conducts the NEPA review and consultations based on the information provided in the construction and operations plan. However, BOEM has noted this question and will coordinate with the developer to confirm project details for phase 2 to resolve any discrepancies in what was provided to BOEM and presented at the NEPA presentation back in September.
Great, thank you, Christine. That was the last of our submitted questions. So I believe we are now, let's go ahead and go to the next slide, please. I'm going to turn it over to Jess for closing remarks.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Jess Stromberg, and I am acting as the Chief of the Environment Branch for Renewable Energy within the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, or BOEM. I want to thank the Army Corps of Engineers, the ERM, and BOEM staff for holding a successful virtual public hearing for the New England Wind Draft Environmental Impact Statement. We had a good turnout today, peaking at around 90 participants. And to everyone that participated in today's meeting, I want to thank you for spending this time with us and for the many thoughtful comments and questions you submitted. All comments received today and during the comment period will be assessed and considered by BOEM during preparation of the final environmental impact statement. I hope you have been provided a good forum to share your comments on aspects of the project that are of concern to you, and that you found our answers to your questions both useful and responsive. Your input is essential to ensure that the best informed decision will be made for the proposed project. I also want to reiterate that there are multiple methods available to you to provide your comments on the draft environmental impact statement by February 21st, 2023. Comments can be submitted through regulations.gov using docket number BOEM-2022-0070 or mailed to BOEM enclosed in an envelope labeled New England Wind DEIS and addressed to Program Manager, Office of Renewable Energy Programs, Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, 45600 Woodland Road, Sterling, Virginia, 20166. Just as a reminder, a recording of today's virtual meeting, as well as the future virtual meetings, will be posted on BOEM's New England Wind virtual meeting room website. And thank you again for participating in today's virtual public hearing. Have a good afternoon.